3, 2, 1, 2. Let's just do this, okay? The V-List podcast. I am joined today by one of my favorite content creators for the first episode of 2023. So welcome back. Welcome to 2023. Welcome Lloyd, not George, to the podcast. I'm so happy to have you on the V-List. I think you're one of my few subscribers. I appreciate it, because it's rough out here.
It is. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yay! Well, I'm glad that you accepted the invite. Like I said, this is the first episode of 2023 for me. I am trying to just remain consistent with my podcasting. So, as you know, I started a podcast. Well, I started my podcast like 4 years ago, but I started a YouTube at the end of last year. And that requires a little more work, a little more effort. And I'm just trying to step my game up when it comes to my podcast and, just getting more listeners. Initially, I didn't necessarily have a goal when I started my podcast. And as I've been recording podcast episodes over the last 4 years, of course, my goals have changed a bit. And, the trajectory, I guess, of who I'm trying to reach and the messaging and all that has sort of shifted, which I guess is to be expected. But your content really helped me a lot. So I wanted to say thank you because I randomly came across your content on TikTok one day. And I'm like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. At least he sounds like he does. So.
That's so funny. I really appreciate that because every single day I'll tell my wife, I'll be like, I'm one video away from stopping these videos. Because to your point, you don't know who's listening. You can't tell how it's impacting people. You're just putting it out there and hoping somebody's listening. So it really means a lot to hear somebody actually say that it's like helpful.
Yes, it was helpful to me. It was, and I can't exactly pinpoint like which video it was where I was like, okay, let me follow this guy. But you were just giving like podcast tips or tips for podcasters. And it may have been one of those videos where you're just like, just start, just do it. And I'm like, you know what? He's right. I'm just going to keep going. I've been going this long. I might as well keep going and, just do something different. And like each year I try to like do something different with the podcast just to, change it, but not, change my whole branding, I guess you could say. And that's the other thing. I don't really know that I necessarily have like a real strong brand.
Yeah.
So
how has it been like this last month on YouTube? Because I feel like a lot of people, including myself, are just like that. It kind of feels like we're just like winging it. Like as long as I don't quit, I just do another episode. We're okay.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I'm winging it. It's like I've watched YouTube for so long and watched content creators, and I'm one of those type of people who, I guess you could say I'm a creative, but I also don't like to, even though there's nothing really truly original, I don't really like to mimic anyone's style, right? So like, I know there's a lot of people on YouTube, content creators just in general, who like, they have this sort of script, right? There's like this content creator like, hey guys, welcome back to my channel type thing. And I'm just like, I don't want to be that, but then I find myself like still doing some of the same thing.
I feel you.
It's like, how do you like, and I don't really have like a niche per se, I guess, or just like a really defined niche. So it's like me, I think I'm slowly finding my niche or finding my lanes. And that's been like the main thing keeping me going. But for me, I'm just, it's kind of random. Like I'll have a thought that I want to share, and most times it may be inspirational or it might just be like really helpful or just a thought that I have been thinking or going over from a conversation that I've had with someone, and I just share it on like my socials. And I used to just share it on like my Instagram stories and now I just share it on TikTok. But I'm like, okay, I can share these things on my podcast too and repurpose some of those messages for YouTube videos.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. And I think similar. I feel like one thing that people don't talk enough about is that like I think content has its like highs and lows, and sometimes like you may be in a high, kind of like you just said, where it's like, oh, I think I just discovered my niche, which is like a huge accomplishment. And then sometimes it's these weird lows where it's just like, I have no idea what's happening right now.
No idea.
And so I don't know that people talk about that a lot, but it's definitely real and it definitely exists.
So how did you like kind of get into the whole content creation? Because I think that in itself, like coaches and people who teach content creation is a niche.
Yeah.
So like, how did you sort of like fall into that or choose that as your niche, or have you?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I like just hearing you say that, I literally remember when I started on TikTok December of 2021.
Okay.
And I literally remember saying to myself, I will not be a coach. Like I hate coaches. I hate what they stand for. I hate coming across like you're trying to sell something. I just hate that so much. And as I just sort of like my whole idea with starting was like, man, if I just wake up every single day and I put out one video per day, I wonder what will happen if I just
Mm,
did that forever. Just like no goals, no anything, just like here's a video, let's see what the world can do. And so about like still no niche, no anything. So it started in December, and then by about May, I kind of had a niche. I was like, oh, I kind of like talking about podcasting. People are resonating well with that. And so that's kind of where I found my niche. And so from May of 2022, when I discovered my niche to now, I mean, some miraculous things have happened. And I just kind of feel like that's my favorite thing about content. It's just like you don't know what could happen. Like God just you put out the content, God'll do the rest. I mean, literally, like I discovered my niche in May. Within about a month, I went from I think like 700 followers to maybe like 5,000 in like a month. It just like went crazy.
wow.
And so it's just, I feel like I'm at a point now where I'm trying to transition from like, okay, like last year was heavily focused on like, how do you become a creator? And you do that by just posting content. But
Hmm.
now I think I could be a little more strategic, intentional, and try and transition from like a part-time creator to a full-time creator.
I love that, and I think it's every content creator's dream, even if they don't like verbalize it, to let
Yeah.
their content like fully sustain their life. And like for me, I always like, when I started my podcast, it was just kind of like, yeah, I just want an outlet to talk, get my thoughts out, share my opinions on my own platform where nobody can delete my content or comment or whatever. It's just like, this is me, this is what I
Yeah.
want to talk about. And it was sort of like a healing thing for me, almost like therapy, like self-therapy for me, because I started it like, it was like the year after my divorce. So I was just like, you know what, this is just kind of cathartic, right? I can just
Yeah.
talk, get my thoughts out. And I didn't think about it as a full-time thing. I didn't take it seriously enough for it to be like, oh, I could, do this full time, because
Yeah.
I've always worked a corporate job. I was a consultant, so I was traveling all the time, and it was just an outlet for me. But then I started like doing my research, and I realized like, oh, the people really do this full time. So I'm like, well, I wonder like what I have to do to make this like my thing. But it always just seemed like a lot of work because I worked a full-time corporate job. I
Right.
didn't have the energy to, or the mindset, or the like wherewithal to put effort and energy into this and into my job. So I was like, I don't want to get like resentful and burnt
Yeah.
out and then not do it. So I'm just doing it for fun. I'm just going to do it as an outlet, and eventually it will make room for me, right? And I
Yeah.
feel like now, like you said, I just keep putting it out there. And I'll pray about it too. Like, okay, God, like, am I supposed to stop? And it's just like, no, just keep sharing, because you're reaching someone, right? Even if it's just, 20 people, you're reaching someone. So just keep going. But now I'm in this position where I'm no longer working. And
Mm,
I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do with myself? And God is like,
yeah.
you have all these talents in your hand. Like, I don't want to be like that parable in the Bible where
Right.
I go to God and he's like, I gave you these talents. Like, what did you do with them?
Right.
Right.
I gave you the
So,
talents and I gave you the time.
and I gave you the time. So it's like, put it into
Yeah.
it. So that's why I'm here. I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
Let me put this effort in, and collaborate with some dope people like yourself, and just see what happens, see where it goes.
Yeah. Well, what are you hoping for? What is like the best case scenario? Like what could happen?
Best case scenario, I get some dope sponsors for my podcast and my audience grows or my listenership grows and I'm able to start making enough money off of my podcast for me to live and
I
not have to
love
worry
that.
about going back into corporate. I mean,
Yeah.
that's, I have a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like I have skills, right? Like I could use, I could go back into corporate if I need to, but it's not where my passion lies
Yeah.
anymore. And so I want to be able to utilize those skills that I've developed in, professionally and use
Yeah.
them for my passions. So
Yeah, I love that. And I think that is like the beauty of it, this idea that like you have options, right? And like this is a great time to go for your dreams because you can always go back into corporate, so to speak. So just even hearing you say that, it like inspires me. And I think like my content creator journey has been like almost double fold in the sense that like the practical aspect of it is like, can you create content and grow an audience? But I think the spiritual aspect of it is like, can you trust God for something bigger? And can you be consistent? And can you be persistent when it doesn't look that good? And so all of those like intangibles that I think are really important have just been like, it's been great to learn some of those via my content.
yeah. So did you like come from the content space like when you or like cuz you're doing I'm assuming you're doing this full time now. So is this like the space you've always been in like or were you in a different arena before?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so my background is actually like project management. That's what I do like by trade.
Okay.
And then December last year, I also decided I was going to become a freelance project manager. And so technically that's still what I do now. I'd say about like 50% of my income comes from that, just like freelance project management. And then the other 50% comes from like content creation. No, it's actually probably like 70-30.
Oh,
And so it's
okay.
great to have like the flexibility and know that like if I need to be in London for a conference, I can go. Like nobody's going to tell me no. But it's also great to know that like, okay, like I have a stable job. There's been some months where like I haven't made any money from content and I do need to like rely on my job income. And so it's been nice to have that flexibility and I love it. And so I'm also like very much want to be a full-time creator, but certainly not in a rush. Like if it takes
Hmm.
3 years, 5 years, 1 year, I don't necessarily really care.
Okay.
And I think that's something that's also kind of helped me with my content versus how I felt before, which is like, I need this to work today.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of creators put that kind of pressure on themselves, but I think taking that off and being able to say like, okay, like what can I create today? Or even like there was a time where I felt like if a sponsor reached out, like I had to work with them. And now I
Mm.
kind of feel like I just can feel it out. And if it works, it works. If not, it doesn't.
Yeah. That, I feel like that's kind of my next um homework assignment, if you will, or part of this journey is really trying to find sponsorships and figuring out
Yeah.
how that works, and what resonates with me and will align with my brand. Because like it's good that you still have like your project management job, but you have that flexibility. I think that was always the barrier for me. It was
Yeah.
the flexibility to be able to just kind of be anywhere. And right now, like technically I can just be anywhere, but I'm also like I gotta budget and save and really think strategically here,
Yeah.
because I live in DC, as you know, it is not cheap. so so I gotta be realistic, but at the same time, I have options like to explore, right? I have a
Yep.
little bit of time to explore and I can, try to figure out what this whole like there's the many different aspects of content creation
Yeah.
because there's not just there's the podcast and then there's like
Yep.
YouTube and then there's like TikTok or Instagram and like figuring out how I can monetize any or all of those things enough to bring in a sustainable income. I think that is
Yeah.
kind of my focus in what I want to do with the podcast this year.
That's so exciting. Like I feel like I'm more excited about this than you because I just feel like you're so well positioned for like success. Like you're
I
already on
appreciate
YouTube, you already have a podcast. I think there's a lot of people that are starting podcasts this year.
that.
And I
Hmm.
think 5 years from now, we're going to look back and it's going to be like, gosh, I'm so glad I started that podcast when I did. And I
Yeah.
just think even just as like I start to see like a lot of my collaborations, I've been like just grouping them. So instead of having somebody pay me for TikTok, I'm now saying like, hey, if you quadruple that, I'll do TikTok, include you in my email, put you on my podcast, and do a YouTube shout out, for example, and being able to like increase the revenue per deal. So even for that, like you're so well positioned.
See, and this is where, and I remember you sending out your management email, and I was like, oh, I would love to work with him. And then I saw the price, I was like, oh, girl, you can afford him. But this is where I can really use like guidance or a manager, because like I don't even know how to pitch or like reach out to these companies. Like for instance, I used your code for Riverside, so shout out to
Yep.
Riverside, shout out to you for the code. And then like I signed up for like one of their for the program or plans that they have, right? One of the packages. And
Mm-hmm.
in the email or on the Riverside app, it also has like sign up to be an affiliate, right? So I did that, and then so it gives me a link, but it's like, great, I have this link, but like, okay, what do I do with it?
Yeah.
That's, you know, it's like that's the kind of stuff that like a manager or somebody who is a content creator coach can
Yeah.
help me with. So like, what are your, I guess, suggestions for people like me who need a coach, would benefit greatly from a coach, but not really in a position to afford a coach at the moment?
Yeah, that's a great. So like controversial a tad. I think that like people don't shoot their shot enough, and I think people overcomplicate um the opportunities that they want. So for example, that was like the perfect example.
Okay.
Like I'd say like over 50% of like the people I work with
Mm-hmm.
have never actually asked me for like my analytics, how many followers I have. They don't want to see the analytics after to see how it performed. They don't really care, honestly. They have like more than enough money. And so I think that like if you email someone right now, the
Mm-hmm.
likelihood that they're going to say, "Hey, I actually like your content. I do want to work with you, but show me how many followers you have. Show me how many." Like the likelihood that they're actually going to ask for that is just very, very low. And so I
Okay.
think more people will get deals just literally just sending emails. That's it. Just like taking a template, which I have and I need to
Mm-hmm.
give away, but just like taking that template and emailing 2 people a day. Like
Okay.
that in itself is like more than enough. But to your point, where it's like I think the only benefit of like a manager is maybe they save you time,
Mm.
but for the most part, I think for most people, like they have everything they need right now to be like going crazy with the deals.
Okay, so I'm glad you said that then, because right now, since I have the time, I'm going to make that one of my focuses. Email at least two, I guess, companies or people who I would want to be sponsored by a day,
Yeah,
and just be like, yo, like what kind of deals can you offer me? And I
yeah,
mentioned you on my TikTok, I mentioned you on my YouTube, I mentioned you on my V List podcast. You know, here are my platforms. Here's where I'm at, like,
yeah,
let's work something out. And I think, and I'm not even looking for like these major huge, you know, 5-figure deals just yet. Like, I mean, that would be great if they come in, but I'm just like, let me just get practice with
yeah.
getting sponsorships, reaching out and letting them know that I exist, and then I can start to like field the, you know, what's worth my time versus like what's going to really be like the pot of gold. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and V, you're such a good creator, and your content seems so natural and
Oh,
so
thank
authentic
you.
that like I literally feel like if because it's like I feel like early on, like maybe like 5 months ago, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
what I was doing was just like I'd say like 80% of my content was like UGC content that wasn't on my page. It was just people that were new to TikTok. And so I'd just message them and say, like, hey, if you want, I can create like a few videos for you. It's a minimum of 6 video, every video 450. But now when you start your TikTok, you'll have like content you can use or whatever. And
Oh,
so I feel like that to me is like the perfect example of how like in the future I don't think like your audience size is going to matter. I think how good of a creator you are is what's going to matter. And so I think for people like you, where we're great creators, like I got to this one point where like every single Friday I would send an email. I had this like top list of brands, and I just like pitch them ideas almost to the point where it was like no one told me I was like annoying them, but I was very persistent. And every day, like every week, I just send them like, "Hey, here's 6 ideas I think could be really cool. Like, what if I'm at a conference and I'm like shouting you out this way? What if I'm out on my living room laying on the floor? What if?" And 99% of the time they say no, but like the few times they say yes, it's like great. I get to build my portfolio, and I
yeah.
think the number of like brands that like they don't even want to work with you, but they see you working with someone else, and they're like, you know what? Like, yeah, let's do some stuff together. Is just kind of like funny.
Yeah, I think that that is the a common misconception though, is that like like I know that I can produce good content, but I also don't have like the numbers right to show. Like I don't have a huge following, and I think for me that has been one thing that has kept me from really reaching out to a lot of brands, is because I feel like they're going to be like, and which like you said, majority of them probably will. They'll probably be like, we're good. But I feel like it's part of that negative self-talk and that doubt, right? Like, well, why would they choose you? And then I'm just like, well, why not? Like, you should choose me, because
Yeah.
some of these content
Facts.
creators I see, I'm like,
Facts. Not to mention, it's like I think like we have so many advantages. Like even when I just be talking to people and I literally just be thinking, thank God I had corporate experience, because like just being like professional, just being like, yo, Lloyd might not be the best. He doesn't have the best audience, but he's like on time. He's going to respond to your emails. He's prompt. He has like a process. He's reliable. Like
okay,
at the very least, just that alone. And so I think we have so many things going for us, you know. And so I'm excited to see you get out there and work, and I think this will be a great year for us.
I'm claiming that for both of us. I received that for both of us. And you hit on something that is so factual. It's like we really do underestimate the greatness. And I'm just gonna
Yeah,
brag. I'm just gonna brag on us real quick, but we really do underestimate the greatness that we possess.
yeah,
Because like not only do I am I grateful that I have like corporate experience, because it gives me a bit of business acumen. Like I know how to speak. I know how to negotiate. I know what's
yeah.
acceptable, what's not, you know. But also like I had someone tell me a long time ago, and I used to think he was just trying to gas me up because it was some dude I used to talk to. I thought he was like whatever, like, but he was like, you know, you really could be like a blogger. And I'm like, I ain't no blogger. Like, I'm not no like IG model chick. And he's like, no, like, you don't understand. Like, I meet a lot of women who, you know, they like try to portray this lifestyle online, and it's like fake. It's all fake. Like, they'll go
Mm,
to like different places. Like, there's nothing wrong with like going to a place to do a photo shoot to get content. Like, I mean, that's what people do all the time, right? But he's like, but like you don't have to do, like you can do this in your house. Like the places that you go, like the vacations you're on and stuff, like that's all real. Like you're living
right.
this life in real life. You're not faking the funk. He was like, and if you just like put your life out there, people would be interested. And I'm like, I'm not a blogger. I would be like, I am not doing that. I am not going online being like, hey guys, look at my outfit, because I'm not dressed every day. Like, you know,
Yeah,
but it's just like after, when he used to say that stuff to me, I used to kind of look at him like side eye, like, what are you talking about?
yeah,
But then I realized, like, no, he's right. Like, there's a lot of people who are like content creators, bloggers, lifestyle bloggers. That's what he was. He was like, you could be a lifestyle blogger. I'm like,
mm,
what? And he's like, because you're actually living this life. There's a lot
yeah,
of people who aren't even living the lifestyle that they're portraying online, but they're going out taking pictures, or you know, faking the funk, like posting stuff, and people think they're living this life
yeah,
and they're not. And he's like, it's not authentic, but you're actually living this life. And I used to just be like, whatever. But he's right. Like I do have like something that I could show if I really wanted to. But I
yeah,
decided to use my platforms to just share like thoughts and inspiration, as opposed to just being like showing off like, oh, here's my life, here's my
yeah,
outfit, here's my apartment. Like I don't care about that kind of stuff.
yeah.
But to your point, like we do have it though. Like we could,
We
if we
do,
really
we
wanted to be
do.
out here flossing, we could.
Right, 1000%. And I think like this is the last thing I'll say about like the business of it, but I think like even just like there's times where you may be in a call and it's like they want to talk about just you creating content or how you can help them by creating. And I think just even like your perspective where it's like, yeah, I can create, but I know enough about business where I can also say like, are we sure we want to do it? Do we want to release it this day? Do we want to do this differently? And I think all those different perspectives are traditionally like not included when you think about traditional influencers. But I think in the future and with UGC creators, like all of that is on the table. So
So
I'm so excited.
the UGC thing, like I know that's I know it stands for user generated content. So is it
Yeah.
just like quite literally like products that you like use on a regular basis that you're promoting, and then they decide to like to sponsor you because you're promoting these like random, because like is that what UGC is?
I think part of it is like putting a face to a company. And I think like I used to, one of my project management contracts was with a larger Fortune 500 company, and they had just got onto TikTok. And the way we were structured is like, we were trying to figure out like who's going to be the, like, who's actually going to hold the camera and walk to these different rooms and like capture video, because it's like, we're a large company. And so I think those are like the perfect examples where it's like, I don't think TikTok is like other platforms where you can just like have some agency create some stock footage video for you and it's still
Mm-hmm.
going to look good. Like I feel like for TikTok, it really has to be like a person with a phone actually filming for real, like in
Okay.
your office or virtually or whatever. And so I think for a lot of companies, they're trying to figure out the most efficient way to do that. And so that has been like, that made wonders for me. Like I even had somebody hit me up and they were like, "Hey, are you the CEO of this company?" And I was like, "No, no, 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 no. I just create company. I just create content for them." And so I think like I've done that with a few different companies, just creating content for them, just to at least get them started. And I think that's like a very easy starting point where it's like, you're new to TikTok, I'll create your first 6 videos, your first 10 videos, so on and so forth.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Because I see like people doing like products a lot of times, like,
Yeah,
you know, like I tried to do one for like Nespresso because I drink Nespresso literally every day. Like it's my favorite coffee. And so
yeah,
I'm like, you know what? I'll just like take a few videos, and this is something that I would do anyway before I even got on
mhm.
TikTok. Like I would just do it anyway and like record like my favorite Nespresso drink or record me making it and then like post it, and then I would tag Nespresso in it, and I'm just like, oh yeah, you know, give me a sponsorship. But I wasn't really serious about it. But I think I'm gonna be for real this time. Like Nespresso, y'all need to hit me up because
Yeah, facts. And I think like that to me is like, okay, that is like the perfect scenario. But like I think like a scenario where this is like a no-brainer to me is if you hit up a small black-owned business that has 5 employees that's trying to figure out how they can use social media, where it's just like, this is this is a no-brainer, right? Like there's no one more perfect than me to create your content.
I actually have the perfect person actually too, and it's funny that you say that because it's actually my ex husband's his parents, right? His my in law,
Yeah,
my
exact. That's exactly perfect.
and he's like, you know, I know you're an actress and stuff, and you know, I'm trying to think about what I could do. And again, this was like a while back when he was like asking me about posting stuff on
Yeah,
Facebook, like how I do. He didn't ask me to do it, but he was asking like how to do it. I could just hit
yeah,
him up like, yo, you want me to do it for you, and we can work out a
right.
little deal.
For
You know,
real.
5 videos for however much.
Seriously, that's a great idea. That's the perfect person to do it for, honestly.
I didn't even think about that though. I think that's see, you're giving me great information already. You hired. As soon as I get some money, I'm gonna hire you as my manager.
Yeah, that whole thing was very, very crazy because I with that entire thing, I was just trying to say like, could someone actually make money from TikTok? Like, could you say, "Hey, I'm going to do something," and have X number of people actually reach out? And I was actually pretty shocked with how it went. I think I had almost like 70 people reach out for that like offer, which is just like bizarre. But I think people are underestimating the value of TikTok.
For sure, because I mean, it definitely. I've connected with quite a few people on TikTok who I've
Yeah,
actually found very useful for me, just
yeah,
in some career aspect. Like there was another lady that I hit up who was like a career coach. Like she coaches Black female entrepreneurs get their businesses like up and you know and coaches them. And so I have a consulting firm that I
mhm,
established back in like 2020, but I
yeah,
never did anything with it because I've always been in corporate. But now that I have this free time, I'm like, yo, I'm just gonna put my efforts and my energy into my things. So my
mhm,
podcast, my consulting firm, you know. So I hit her up, and you know, she doesn't have that many followers on TikTok yet either. But I just came across one of her videos and I decided to inbox her, and I emailed her like, yo, I'd really love to have like a chat with you. And we talked, and she was able to really help me, give me some really good insight and information. And you know, it's like there are people like her and like you and other people that like I want to keep on my in my in my toolbox so that when
Yeah.
I'm able to like really fully collab with you guys, like it's full throttle, because it is useful for that. Like TikTok is useful for that. That's how I discovered who you are.
Yeah,
So
100%. I love that. And I think to your point, it just creates so many great relationships and connections. I meant to ask you, I was very curious. Do you feel like your you just mentioned you have a background in acting. Do you feel like that's helped you from like a creation standpoint? Like that's made it easier for you to create content online?
I think so. I think because I'm not afraid to be like on camera or in front of a camera or speak on like a stage or whatever. But I think uh, so. Yes, to answer your question, I think that has helped me. And I didn't realize how many people are so afraid of just being on camera. So, like for instance, there was this Black Girl Follow Train like hashtag that was going on TikTok, right? And there was a lot of like I ended up getting back over like the threshold with my followers because
Mhm.
this TikTok page that I have is new because my old one got shut down in June. Yeah, that's the whole story, right?
Wow.
It's a whole story behind like it was crazy. So I like started my TikTok over in June of 2022, and was just trying to rebuild from there because so um, on the hashtag, I was like, oh, well, let me use this hashtag just to see if I can get some followers up. And now, by the end of December, or before the end of December, I have like 1,600 followers now. And by
Wow.
just not, I don't want to say just from the hashtag, but the hashtag helped. But there were
Yeah.
a lot of people who were like on this Black Girl Follow Train hashtag who they would follow you, and I'm like, oh, well, I'll follow you back, right? But I'll go to their page, and it's either
Mm.
private, which I'm like, I don't understand that. Why do you have a private page? Or they don't have any videos, like no content. And I'm like,
Yeah.
so I made a video and I was like, hey, no shade, but like, if you're following me, thank you. But I'm only going to follow you back if I see some content on your page. Like, I don't want to follow like ghost accounts because it's going to
Yeah.
mess up my algorithm, right? And so there were some people who responded to that video like, I'm just really afraid to be on camera, or I have no idea what to talk about, but I'm going to try soon. And thank you for following. And as soon as I get some videos, I'll come back. And I'm like, there were so many people who said that. And I'm like, is it really that hard? Like, people really
Mm.
are afraid to just come on camera and talk. And
Yeah.
so I'm grateful that I don't have that trepidation. I don't have that fear. I don't have that, I guess, sort of hang up, even though I don't always feel like I want to be on camera. It takes nothing for me to just pop on and start talking, and I think my acting does have
Yeah.
a lot to do with that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I resonate with that. I think I'm more similar to you, but I do see people that let fear not let them start, and I feel like obviously, there's opportunities to be had for the people that do start, but I also understand the trepidation.
Yeah, and I think for my trepidation, it wasn't even so much about being on camera. It was laziness. I'm just gonna be
Mhm.
real. Like, even that's why I never had a podcast, or I mean, never had a YouTube, because the
Yeah.
podcast was so easy. I could just turn on my Anchor app and be like, "All right, talking." I'm talking into the app, and it's no big deal, and it'll go out. It'll be distributed. Very little editing required. For YouTube, it was like, oh, I have to like actually look like something, and it was like, well, I don't really want to I don't want to put on this facade. I want to show up as myself. I'm not made up every day. So I'm just going to show up as myself. And I also have this perfectionism thing. I'm a Virgo. So things have to be a certain way sometimes. And if they're not like a certain way, then I'm like, I'm not doing it.
Right.
So, but that was holding me back. That was holding me back from just doing it. So my fear wasn't so much being on camera. It was it being what I wanted it to be, or
Yeah.
looking a certain type of way, which I felt would be representative of me. But it's just like, if it's you on camera talking, then it is representative of you. So I
Yeah.
had to get over that.
100%.
It's not the fear of not showing up, but
Yeah.
everybody has their thing that keeps them from
Yeah.
creating.
I resonate with that. I feel like my thing was just sort of like, do I have anything to say that people will feel like is what I have to say worth sharing?
Mm.
And I think that kind of hindered me for a long time.
But I love that you found your niche, and I still feel like I don't necessarily have a niche, even though I do have, like, I guess if you had to put me in a niche or put me in a box, it'd be more like motivational, I guess, content,
Yeah.
but not quite. but I knew what I didn't want to talk about, right? Like I knew I
Mhm.
didn't want to be one of those like hot topic podcasts. I didn't want to
Yeah.
be like reporting the same news that was on the Shade Room, or
Yeah.
like the news or whatever. Like everybody can give their opinion on something, and that's what most people. That's what all this is. Really, it's just everyone's opinion. It's very little
Yeah.
factual data that goes into it, but like. I just didn't want to be another one of those, right? So, yeah, there are maybe some episodes that I will share my opinion on a topic or share my opinion on something that's happened, but for the most part it's for me, I'm sharing thoughts that I feel would be helpful to someone, help them grow in some way, shape, or form, help them spiritually or emotionally or mentally or professionally even. So my
Yeah.
goal is to share content that helps people in some way, shape, or form.
That's interesting that you say that, because I feel like everybody feels like their niche isn't as clear as they would like it to be, myself included. But I feel like when you're looking at other people, it's always so clear and concise. Like, oh, I mean, that's your niche. Like, talk about that. Like, it's very easy to see. But I think we always like discount like our own niche.
Because we don't want to be boxed in.
Yeah, 100%, 100. And for some reason, we think it's just like too small.
It's limiting. Yeah, it's like, well, I don't want
Yeah,
to just talk about that. Well, it's like, you don't have to just talk about that, but that's what you're known for. Like, that's what people will
yeah,
come to you for. It's like, oh, if I want to, learn about content, even though you might not feel like that's your niche or that's not the niche you want to stay in, it's something that's going to attract people to you,
yeah,
and then the other stuff you start talking about, it could also be interesting. You just got to talk about it and share it.
yeah.
And I think a lot of that is it, the numbers will tell, right?
Right.
Because I did my the end of year thing for Anchor, and it gives you all the
Yeah, yeah,
analytics. And I'm like, of course, y'all nosy people. The highest episode that I got was like the one that I talked about my ex husband and our marriage. And I'm like,
Mm.
of course, that got the most listens because everybody wants to be in your business. Like, oh, let me,
Right,
what happened?
right, right. That's the perfect one for me to tune in on. Now, that makes a lot of sense. How have you been promoting your podcast?
I I just promoting it. I just talk about it on TikTok and Instagram. I have
Yeah,
an Instagram page. Um, and I tell people, like, oh yeah, I
yeah,
have a podcast, but yeah, I don't think I really do a lot of promotion or even like marketing, if you will. I think
yeah.
that's
So,
that's what I'm trying to get into.
but like the episode that you just said did like the best in your opinion. Like, how did people know that that's what you were talking about on that episode?
Oh, because of the title of it, probably
Got you,
the
got you.
case. It,
Okay.
it was it, the title was the case of my ex.
Yeah. And I meant to ask you that at the beginning too. I think that is like my biggest fear, like having to talk about something that I feel like really is like actually happening in my life, or something that's kind of like personal to me that I feel like, now I have to let the world into my life a little bit. What's that experience been like for you?
So in general, I'm a pretty private person. Like I don't really showcase or put a lot of my business out there. And if you know any of my business, it's after the fact. Like it's
Mm,
literally after I've gone through it or processed it or whatever. Um, just because like I'll share thoughts and stuff like that, but like in terms of sharing like my personal life online, yeah, it has to be something that is like, okay, that's over and done. Now I'll let you all in on what's happening with me or what happened with me, right? So yeah, that's kind of how I
yeah,
do
that
it.
makes that makes a lot of sense. And I think like that, I think that's a great like approach. That I think sometimes people talk about things when it's a little too fresh, and that's not always beneficial. But I love that.
Yeah, I think it's just how I've always been. Again, I don't know, not to blame my zodiac, but maybe it's a Virgo thing. I'm not really
Mhm.
sure. I'm only going to share what I really want you to know,
Mm,
and a lot of times I'm not sure what that even looks like until after it's done, after it's processed, and
yeah,
then I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to share what
right,
happened
right, right, right.
because I'm
Yeah, no,
I'm
that
over
makes a
it.
lot of sense.
Yeah.
Right.
So, do you feel like you need to, or like, because I think like sometimes like when you bring your wife on the episodes on your
Yeah.
YouTube and stuff, like sometimes that's a little personal, but like are you like nervous about sharing like your personal life on your platforms?
Yeah, 100%. And I think very similar to you, like if I'm sharing something at that point, it's like, okay, this is very surface level. And I think sometimes because it's maybe more private, to me that's not always like the same as like intimate.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of like what I'm okay talking about are things that I'm like, okay, great, I'm okay with like people that don't know me like judging me about this or making a comment that could be hurtful. But there are things that I just personally would never share on like a podcast that I think are more reserved for my friends. And I think sometimes as like a content creator, it's a difficult balance, especially for like people that are like vloggers, or if you're creating content like 2-3 times a week, just trying to think about like what to talk about while still building that connection with your audience is
Mm-hmm.
like, it's so hard. And I think people underestimate as podcasters the level of like depth that your audience wants to have with you. It's unprecedented, and I think more than any other platform.
But to your point, there is that connection piece. Like I think sharing a little bit of your personal life. Like I think there are some, content creators who are like, who have lots and lots of followers, and people feel entitled to their business
Mm,
and feel entitled to know what's happening in their real lives, and
yeah,
they're not entitled to it, but they feel that way. But I think there is that fine line that you have to like straddle the fence a little bit, because it's like if you don't share anything about yourself personally, then you could lose some people, because
yeah,
people, there's a reason that they follow you. Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, they're talking real good on this in this area, but if they really appreciate that, they also kind of want more. People are
right,
greedy, so they're like, hey, I really kind of want to know a little bit more about this person. So
yeah,
if you share a little bit, and of course with discretion, and you have control over how much you share, I think that
yeah,
just kind of does a good job in retention or retaining your
yeah,
audience, because then it humanizes you. It's like, oh yeah, I can relate to that.
yeah. 100%. Yeah, that's such a great point, especially in like this world of like social where it seems like everybody's showing like the best aspects of themselves. Like to have someone actually be like vulnerable, I think is like definitely very much wanted. And I think I meant to ask you about this because it's like, I think one thing I'm thinking about this year is like, how do I figure out if I have 10,000 followers, how do I figure out what percentage of those people I can consider like super fans or people that really feel like I'm interested in like building depth with this creator? And I think personally, I think I'd be okay with like less followers if I knew that like, okay, like a large percentage of these people really rock with me.
Hmm.
And I think with like the way TikTok is set up, it's so easy for people to discover you that I think that's often mistaken, and it becomes harder to build like real community.
I agree with that. I think you're absolutely right. Like in my case, yeah, I want to grow my audience, I want to grow my listenership and all that. But I also like, I have a book, I have a journal that I wrote last year. So I also want customers, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, how can I convert, the people who are going to engage on my platforms and, like, share, whatever, but also
Yeah.
like become a customer. That's,
Yeah.
that's important. And I know, like, even on my Instagram page, like I have two Instagram pages. I have one for the podcast, and then I have my personal one. And like my personal Instagram page, I don't really have that many followers. I maybe have like, I don't know, 22,000, maybe almost 3,000 followers. I'm not even sure, because I don't
Hmm.
know. But my engagement on there is typically really great. Like I'll post something, and like people comment, they like, they whatever, they share, um, and it's the same for my podcast, but a little less engagement on my podcast. I have more followers on my podcast page than I do my personal Instagram page. But I
Hmm.
just feel like they're just so much more engaged on my personal page. And I think it's because it is just me sharing me on
Yeah.
there, right? Like I'm not trying to necessarily sell them anything.
Yeah.
And TikTok, yeah, TikTok, those people are fickle. So I mean, no,
Yeah.
no shade, but it's just like, it's just a constant. Like they might like it, they might comment or whatever. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
What's
with
been
you.
helpful in terms of building engagement with your products and either getting people to buy or comment or just click, or what do you think has worked well on Instagram for you?
On Instagram, I think it is just the fact that my personal page, I kind of already had that level of engagement there.
Yeah.
So when I put something out, people supported it, and like when I released my book last year, um, most of my like sales and my marketing was from Facebook and Instagram. And it was just like, hey guys,
Hmm.
I wrote a book. here's where you can purchase it, and people would share it, reshare it, post it, and I was like, tag me when you purchase it, and they did that, and so reusing their content and sharing it out was really helpful.
That's awesome.
And I think if I had, obviously if I had more of a larger following, it probably would have sold a lot more. But at the same time, I attribute making any sales to the fact that I have people on my Instagram page who engage with me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. That definitely matters.
Yeah. So now I'm just trying to get that same level of engagement on TikTok, which I know it's going to be a little bit harder, but also YouTube, because YouTube people will engage. There's some people on YouTube that I literally watch their YouTube every day, because they have a message every day. And I'm like, okay, after I read my scripture or whatever, I'm like, all right, what encouraging word can I hear from this person today? And they're right on my algorithm, so that's what I want to be for people. I want people to be like, oh, what's VL's talking about?
Facts. And I think a lot of people are leaving all these platforms to go to YouTube.
It's encouraging, but also kind of discouraging, because it's I don't want it to become an oversaturated. All of it's oversaturated, though. Everything's oversaturated. If we're being honest, it's all oversaturated.
Right.
We just have to be strategic. So that's my goal. It's learning strategy so that I can not just stay consistent, but what is my strategy?
Right.
Don't ask me that
matters.
Right
Did you try any other social platforms like Be Real, or there's another one called Hive?
No. So
okay.
No.
Yeah, you didn't miss anything.
Okay. So. There was another one that so a few months ago was the DC Music Festival, it was at the Duke Ellington School of Performing Arts, and there was this company there. They just started this new platform, a social networking platform as well, and I forgot what it's called. I'm gonna find it on here, but I downloaded it and everything, but I'm like, do I really have the time to try Repit Social? It's called Repit Social.
Oh, interesting. What's what is it?
So
what's it about?
It's another almost like a TikTok or Instagram, but you can have several different flags or tags, I think is what they called it. So one tag could be if you're Nigerian or something like that, it'd be the Nigerian tag. And so then you just post a whole bunch of stuff on that channel that talks about that. Then you have
Gotcha.
Another tag that might be a religious tag. So it's everything you talk about under that tag is spiritual or whatever. But it's one page, but you have all these different tags or avenues that can garner you different followers from those niches or genres or whatever. But it's all one page.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. That's what I understood it to be. And so I downloaded it. I have not really done a lot of activity on there or research or whatever, and I don't know how you would monetize or anything like that. I'm sure you can, but the creators of the app were at the music festival, and they were trying to explain it to people, getting people to download it. So I don't know, maybe something to look into. But then there's also Fan Base, which is Black owned, and I do have that as well. But it was just another thing. Do I have time to put into this too?
Yeah. I feel like I'm such a geek for this. If you create an app that just sucks, but you say new people will find you, I'm there. I'm on it. And I feel like that was kind of my frustration with all of these apps, Fanbase included. It's just I don't know that new people actually see me. You would be expecting me to bring people from another platform to here.
Yeah. Oh, and the other one that I'm on that I started on last year was Wisdom. Have you heard of the Wisdom app?
No, I haven't.
So they were a beta last year, and it's almost similar to a Clubhouse. Do you know Clubhouse?
Okay. Yeah.
Except you can basically have these live conversations or podcast episode conversations, and people can listen in on the conversation while you're talking, and then you can bring them up on stage if you want to talk to someone live, and it just be random people. So I have that, and then I also have what's the other thing? What's the other thing on here that I downloaded last year and started a channel, but just was okay, what am I doing? It's another app. Hold on, it's on Fireside. This is Fire.
Oh,
this is Riverside.
That sounds familiar.
Fireside. I think it's called Fireside. I'm gonna find it. But yes, it's another app
That's
that like you
interesting.
can have like a video podcast. There's fan base. Where's Fireside? It's on here. Anyway, yeah, it's Fireside.
Yeah. I'm gonna check that out. So Fireside and Wisdom.
Fireside and Wisdom. Yeah, they're both platforms that you can like put your
Check out. Yeah.
yeah.
Just hearing you platforms just made me exhausted. Just hearing it.
Okay, because I'm like, can I just figure out YouTube?
Right.
Figure out like, what I'm doing with this first. But no, you know what? I think, like you said, this is definitely going to be our year. I'm looking forward to seeing the exponential growth that you're going to have with your platforms. I'm proud of you so far for the growth that you've already had. It's very inspiring, so keep going. I'm looking forward to keeping in touch with you, collabing with you even more, working with you hopefully in the future on some brand deals or whatever we got to do. But I just think you're dope. So thank you for being on my first episode of 2023, starting the new year off right.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate that. And same here. I'm looking forward to collaborating and keeping in touch.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot going on, but I think that there's room for both of us and a lot more people. So as long as we just kind of stick together and help each other out, I think that we can go really far.
100%.
Dope. Well, thanks for being on. I'm going to stop the recording.
Thanks.